Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be episode number 425. This is going to be with my friend Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources. I want to thank him for his time. I also want to thank you guys, the listeners. I want to remind you that you can send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com with any questions, comments, anything to do with the podcast. Also, a direct message on my Instagram account. That's at jscottoutdoors. Want to thank you guys for all your avid support. This podcast audience just keeps growing, and I really appreciate your support. I also want to thank the sponsors. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider. I want to remind you guys, if you're not already an Insider member, you can use the JScott promo code when you sign up. You're going to get an GoHunt Gear Shop gift card for $50. And you can redeem those dollars immediately and buy something in the store, as well as put it towards the next purchase. I want to thank GoHunt Insider for their sponsorship, and I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting, KUIU.com. If you want to find out the best ultralight hunting gear, go to KUIU.com and check it out. Phonescope.com, use the JScott16 promo code. You're going to save some money. You're going to get a 10% discount there at phonescope.com, and outdoorsmans.com or 1-800-291-8065. Also want to remind you, on Saturday, that would be, I believe, April 14th, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., the Outdoorsmans there in Arizona is having an open house. Kind of having a long-range glassing BTX open house. You're going to be able to check out all the optics, and it's kind of a demo day, so to speak. So I'm going to be out there. Love to see you guys. Come on out. Love to see you guys out there. So let's get right to this episode with Chris Rowe. I thank you for all of your support.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have our friend Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources on the podcast. And Chris is right in the middle of the Kansas. He's waiting between the youth season and the archery season. I guess it opened, April 9th, but you've got a client coming in tomorrow night. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. So we had our youth hunters the first couple days of season, and I've got a break, and so that next guy comes in tomorrow night late, and then we'll start hunting Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Before we get into what you've been noticing during the week here and your kind of outlook for this archery season and with weather and all the things that play into it, last time we talked to you were to roost and kind of pattern and check out some birds for. You had a couple of girl youth hunters. Walk us through how that, that morning went and how the hunt went and your observations and such with how the hunt went down. And you obviously got two great birds, and but tell us all about it.
Yeah, we ended up with a total of 3, which is great. But so when I hung up and got done talking with you, I put those birds to bed, and it's a chunk of river bottom, big, long chunk of river bottom that I manage. And there were 2 or 3, depending on the day, that some of the birds would kind of group up or break up, but usually about 2 to 3 different groups of birds were roosting in a couple different spots on that river bottom. Well, it seems to always happen this way, that you get you get great weather when no one's here, and then just as soon as somebody gets ready to hunt, the weather just turns horrible, and that's what happened with them. Is we got this brutal strong wind. So the first morning of their hunt, we climbed into a blind that was in between 2 different groups, but it was in a spot where it was protected, so it made sense that might be a place where those birds wanted to go. Well, and just so everybody knows it, it's me, Dad, and then the two girls, 11 and 13, Sadie and Allie, and both of them, they're just these tiny, petite little things. They may weigh 50 pounds, fully dressed, just soaking wet. You know what I mean? They're just tiny little girls. They are a riot. They are the type of kids that just make Jay, you're a guide, and for anybody that takes other people hunting, and especially if you take kids hunting, you know that there's some clients that they're just challenging. That's just all there is to it. It's just challenging. But every now and then you get somebody that, or especially kids, that they're the reason why you love doing what you're doing. And these two girls are that. They are turkey hunters. They are just flat out, they're just hunters. They wanted to be there. They were present in the moment. It didn't matter that we were getting up at 4:30 in the morning. They were up. They were ready. They were excited. It didn't matter how long of hikes we had to take. The fact that we were crossing rivers, they loved every second. They had a great attitude. They are funny as all get out, and just sharp as tacks. Just sharp wit, and they're just a blast. And so we get set up that morning in between the two different roosts. Well, the way the wind was and the behavior of the birds, they just didn't come into the blind within the first few hours of sitting there. And again, it's brutal wind, but seriously, it was like 14 degrees that morning. The first morning, it was cold and windy the entire time they were here. So we packed up, moved, went to another sheltered little pocket that I knew of, and pulled in, and boom, there's two mature birds in there. We get in, get set up, and start calling, get these birds to come right in. However, and I set up the whipping boy, the typical whipping boy setup, and again, this is why I do it. I always want to give the birds an option. Well, these two gobblers come in, and very mature. I mean, the one that she ended up killing, Sadie Killer, was at least a 3-year-old bird. Almost a 10-inch beard, almost inch spurs, but two came in, and when they came around this blowdown, they saw the decoys and immediately went to the Jake decoy, and before they started beating up on him, I think probably the combination of us sitting in the blind, just a variety of factors on the setup. I think they got a little nervous about the starter decoy and or the fact that the blind that we were sitting in now all of a sudden had a bigger gap, a bigger opening in it. And so they didn't get any closer than about 25 yards. Now, they're both using a 20 gauge, so their desired shot was about a 20 max, but this is 25. I thought they could do it. Sadie made a good shot. They're down. Both the girls are excited. She shot, but when she shot, I think she went a little high, and she hit the bird hard, but didn't catch. None of the pellets caught bone, and so the bird goes down. Bird jumps back up, he's flopping around. Then he gets up and he stands there. Well, long story short, they were so excited she couldn't make a good shot on the second one. So we put the guns away. Yours truly stuck out of the blind and stuck up there and had to do a full-on run-down tackle, grab him, wring his neck. But that hunt ended up fun, and so we get the first bird, get a bunch of pictures, and everybody's having a blast and getting a game plan for the next day. Well, the next day, we make this huge hike, get down across the river bottom, get into a blind, and sure enough, the birds work right off the roost like we thought. It took time getting there, but they worked their way right into this little protected pocket that we had, and both of them ended up, Allie shot hers first, boom, put that one on the ground. The second one stuck around long enough for us to get another beat on him, and Sadie got her second bird, and they only had 2 days to hunt, so 3 birds, 2 days with 2 little girls in bad weather, I'll take it. It was a blast. It was fun.
That's awesome. You mentioned the whipping boy setup. For those listeners that haven't heard those prior podcasts where we talk about it, talk about the whipping boy setup, your strategy, placement, and what have you with that.
It's basically, when I go in, especially early season, now as we move through into season, maybe I will not use this as much, but especially out here early in the season, usually the first week to 10 days or so, when the birds are still grouped up somewhat and they're just starting to they're very aggressive towards one another, the gobblers are aggressive towards one another, I will take a full complement of decoys out with me. So I'll have multiple hens, but I will have a Jake decoy and I will have a strutter decoy. I usually set the strutter decoy about 10 yards in front of the blind, right where we want to take the shot, and then I'll take that Jake decoy and put it 5 to 7 yards beyond, past or farther from the blind, and then off to one side or another. So both decoys, the strutter and the Jake, are right smack dab down the barrel of a shotgun, or right smack dab in the primary opening for an archery shot in the blind that we want to take. And then I'll put the hen decoys around just for added realism from that. But my philosophy has always been we never know if we're going to have a gobbler that's aggressive or whether we're going to have a gobbler that, like we talked about before, lovers or fighters. You got some birds that are lovers, some birds that are fighters. If we don't know the type of bird that's coming in, by using that whipping boy setup, and by spacing them out and spreading them out, 5 to 7 to 10 steps apart from one another, it opens that spread up to where not only is it very realistic looking, but more importantly, a gobbler can come in, work in and around those decoys without getting so close that he feels threatened by those decoys. So he can actually come in, and if he's aggressive, he can go right to the Jake, or he can go right straight to the strutter and start beating up on the strutter. But if he's a little bit more timid, he can come in and maybe he just wants to beat up on the Jake, so he'll go to the Jake. Or sometimes you'll have birds that just come in, they don't want any part of the strutter or the Jake, but they want to strut for the hens. By doing it that way, it gives a setup that the birds want to come into, but it gives them the option to engage however they want. And so if the birds come in and engage that Jake or the strutter, they're smack dab either 10, 15, 17 yards in front of the blind, and right there for, in this case, 2 little girls or youth hunters, or if you've got an archery hunter or a shotgun, doesn't matter. It puts those birds right smack dab in the middle of your shooting window.
And Chris, how does that differ as the season moves forward? I mean, it sounds like a great strategy throughout the whole season, but why would you maybe change that up as the season progresses?
Well, what you end up seeing is, that at least for us out here, as the season progresses, a lot of those times will start to break off, and they will have their little core group of hens that they're going to sit with, and they will lock down with those hens. And as the season progresses, they've been in so many stinking fights at this point that some of those birds are just done with it. They don't want to engage. Also, you can end up in situations where, and there's a lot of areas like this, where especially later on in the season, you may have a gang of Jakes. There's maybe 4, 6, 8 Jakes running together, and all of a sudden they just end up being this group of bullies that run everybody around. Well, if that's the case, as we move into the later in the season, sometimes those gobblers just do not want to even be near another strutter. And so if they see a strutter in the field, they might gobble, they might strut, but they stay off at a distance. So if that's the case, then I will just remove the strutter, leave the Jake and then the hens, and oftentimes that will get them to come in. But then as we start moving later on, real late in the season, there's times when all I will do is just go out with a single hen, upright hen, and just make it look like a single hen out there looking for a gobbler that's off cruising or off on his own. So as the season progresses, yes, I will change my setup, and it's usually just based off of the behavior of the birds that we're dealing with. And you can kind of see that. And quite honestly, this past, that hunt with the girls, literally both groups of toms came in to our decoy spread, and both groups, now the second day, the second group that we killed the 2 birds out of, there were at least 3, if not 4 mature birds and several Jakes that were in that group, and they walked right by the strutter and went straight to the Jake. They did not want anything to do with that strutter. So I'm actually thinking for this weekend, depending on the situation, I may try the whipping boy setup once, and if I get the same reaction where they just don't want the strutter, I'll just leave him out of the mix. I'll just leave him out. But it's all just based on the behavior of the birds that I'm working.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And those birds are Rio Grande turkeys that you're
Correct.
playing with there. Would your strategy change at all if, say, you were hunting mountain Merriams or such? Would you still go with the whipping boy setup early on, and then, is there any difference between, say, hunting those Rios and hunting Merriams and Easterns for that matter?
I don't think so. If we're talking about a population dynamic where you have a large group of birds, I have seen situations where, like say for Colorado, now this was for Rio Grandes again, but this was Colorado, Eastern Plains, on some of those dry river corridors where the entire population of turkeys might literally consist of 6 hens and 2 jakes and maybe 1 or 2 gobblers. That's it. That's the only population of birds for miles. These birds know each other. They've met. They're not used to any other birds in their area. So sometimes in those situations, those birds can be extremely cautious. I've seen that happen with mountain Merriams too. If you're dealing with those little tight, isolated, small pockets, those birds get really leery of all of a sudden, here's a big spread of new birds. You're like, where the heck did they come from? That's not right. But for, like you and I, like you guys getting ready to go back down for Goulds, what we saw last year, you've got piles of birds all in the same place. You got mountain Merriams in some of these areas where you've got a really good population, to whether we're talking about, like, say, southwest Colorado, or we're talking about northeast or eastern Wyoming or western Nebraska, where you've got a good population of birds, where you have a lot of conflict and just a lot of mixing of new birds coming and going, and a lot of behavioral interactions, dominance interactions. Absolutely, I will use that setup as my initial setup just to take the temperature of what the birds I'm dealing with. So, yeah, absolutely.
Chris, we talked about, I've done some podcasts on the White Face DSD Strutter and DSD Jake. I talked to Matt Winters. I talked to Brad Cochran and with DSD, and have had several episodes. I'm curious, I've been going back through old videos. I can't find videos where the gobbler is mating the laying hen or the breeding hen, or a hen decoy, or even the real thing. I've been going through, and I don't see where it turns all white, but they're having a lot of success with just the white face. Chris Stone out in California is a firm believer in it. I'm not convinced that it is something that a gobbler does right before breeding, but I am thinking that it definitely is a behavior. I've seen lots of gobblers with white heads. I see that more in a real content, real passive, real kind of lovey-dovey, if you will, gobbler with hens, no other gobblers around, real blue and white. Talk a little bit about, I think you listened to those podcasts, your thoughts and observations. Obviously, everybody has their own observations. Everybody has their own things that really work for them. Matt Winters is saying it's night and day. He would always take the white face. So we have to take what he's saying and go, okay, I get it. Why is it working so well for him? Why is it working so well for Chris Stone? I'm curious your ideas. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious what your thoughts are with that.
Well, yes, first and foremost, yes. I listened to those podcasts. I thought they were great. And obviously there's no question these guys are highly experienced, highly successful. And, obviously, the Matt is the outfitter right here in Kansas, out in eastern Kansas. Is that his name, Matt?
Yeah, Matt, yep.
Okay. And Matt, if you're listening, I apologize. He's obviously making a living at this, and he's doing very, very well, and they're killing just a pile of birds. But, Jay, this is where I think, if you go back to our initial conversation, when you asked my opinion about it, and I made that statement. I said, if he is in a situation where there are a lot of mature birds, it actually makes sense. Because, again, and this is something, again, I agree with you. Everybody's got their opinions. I am coming at this from a researcher, as a biologist position, standpoint, as someone, and I talk about this on the elk module. If we want to really, if we're just talking about success in the hunt and we don't care really about what the behavior is, then who gives a crap? Can it be successful? Yes. In the right situation, absolutely. If you're like me and you geek out on the behavior and you really want to truly understand some of this stuff, then just like I talk about with the elk stuff, the only way to really test a hypothesis, an idea, an opinion, you do not go out and try to find more examples of what you believe. And instead, you should be going out and trying to find examples where your idea fails. You can never prove something to be, the only thing you can really do is disprove it. And if you go out with the attitude of, okay, I believe, let's just use this one on its face value. I believe the white face has to deal with a bird that's going to breed a hen. Okay. If all I do is I go out there and I look for examples of where that happens, then it's going to of course it's going to bolster my idea of that has to be. It's just going to provide, it's a positive feedback loop where I see it, it's what it is, of course it is. But the problem is you can start to get blind to examples where that may not happen. And if it doesn't happen, or if it fails, well then you have to go back and rethink your assumptions. And like you, Jay, I went back and I looked at some of my video footage, and literally on my Instagram page today, you saw the video I posted, and I'm so bummed. I had it was through the spotting scope with the phone scope, and I literally saw this happen. I'm scrambling to get the thing set up, and of course, as soon as I hit record, the bird drops, struts, and moves off. But I have always maintained that a white head is a bird that is visibly broadcasting and showing through his head colors that he believes he is a dominant bird, that he is the boss of that hen that he's with, or that he's the boss of that particular area, or wherever he is, but he believes he is the dominant individual. And so today, perfect example. We've got a situation where we've got three mature birds out in a cornfield. Two are off on the east end of the cornfield with their group of hens. One is locked down literally with one hen. He's out all by himself, one hen. All of a sudden, now, at this time, all three of those birds are with their hens. They're following those hens around, and their heads are just bright red, white, and blue. Beautiful red, white, and blue. All of a sudden, four new birds come up out of the river bottom and they step out into the cornfield and on the edge. The one locked down that was the closest, the single tom that had the single hen, he was the closest one to those new birds. The new birds stepped out, saw, their heads were red, white, and blue. They went into full strut and then back down to upright. They went back down to full strut. They went back up to upright, just kind of looking. As soon as that, now the other tom out in the field, the other three actually, but all of them were all just you know how it is. They're just locked down into full strut. I mean, they just are puffed out, and they're not dropping strut for nothing. So that bird turns and sees the four new birds in the field instantly. That head went from red, white, and blue, and it just all the color change. It was just white, stark white. And that bird maneuvered and changed his position, marched his way towards the new birds. He didn't run them off. He just marched towards the new birds and then positioned himself in between, halfway between the new birds and his hen, and just remained in full strut. big white face. The 4 new birds just kept walking right down the field edge, went around the corner and out into the field. And as soon as they started to leave and walk away, the original bird just dropped strut, turned around, walked back to his head, or walked back to his hen. His head went straight back to red, white, and blue. So, like you, dude, I've gone through, I do not have examples of, I've got piles of examples of gobblers breeding hen. I do not have an example of a gobbler breeding a hen with a white face that I have found so far, but I have multiple examples where a bird has a white face, a white head, when he is in the middle of a dominance display. Now, again, I'm not criticizing Matt or anybody else that is having success with that white head because, again, if you look at their situation, most of them, they are in a situation where there are multiple mature birds running around in an area. And there's probably a sizable number of, 3, 4, 5-plus-year-old birds, very mature dominant birds. So it makes sense that, yes, okay, if a bird is coming up and bringing a hen and there's other birds around, well, it makes sense as a behavioral guy, it makes sense that he would have a white head because he's on top of the hen, he's getting ready to breed her, but his head color is telling everybody else, I'm the dominant one, I'm the boss, okay? Now, whether or not other birds in his area respect that or not, that's irrelevant. But he may be displaying to all the other birds around, don't mess with me, I'm the boss, I'm the dominant bird, I'm going to breed this hen. So all the other birds come in to kick him off because they want to breed. The example that Matt gave where, that one bird came over the hill, saw that white face and came smoking down the hill. Okay, well, again, for me, it makes sense if you're dealing with a bird who has been working a particular field, working a particular area, and he has successfully defended that area or defended the hens in that area. It makes sense to me that he would actually respond better to another white-faced decoy because now that other white-faced decoy is saying, no, I'm the boss. I'm the dominant bird in this area. Oh, the hell you are, and here he comes marching in. Whereas if it was just a simple red, white, and blue head, that Tom might come over, peek over the hill, and go, yeah, all right, he's some young whippersnapper that's just trying to show off. He's trying to get some hens. They're not going to pay attention to him. I'm going to go back over here and do my own thing. If you're in those situations where you have extreme competition and you have a good population of mature birds, I absolutely believe that you will find success in it. Like you and I talked originally, however, for where I hunt, for the populations of birds that I deal with, and when I'm looking at, I'm going to go hunt such and such a place, or I'm going to go hunt, like you, I'm going to go down with you in Mexico, or I'm going to go to Colorado, or I'm going to go to Wyoming, or Nebraska, or Kansas, where I'm hunting. If I'm just going to just strike out and go hunt, and I don't know what type of population of birds I'm going to engage, I will always go the red, white, and blue head.
It kind of reminds me I'm a fly fisherman, and it reminds me of certain colors of flies that guys like to use. And I don't necessarily think that the guys, have a reason that particular fly, I'm using purple because of XYZ, but when it catches fish, they keep using purple.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things, like, I'm kind of in the middle. Part of me is like, yeah, I really want to know why the white is striking, such a response, but I'm also of the camp that, hey, I don't care if he's telling me he paints the head yellow and he gets a huge response. Like, trying to kill turkeys is my ultimate goal, and trying to understand them is also a goal. But I would say you are in the camp that's a little bit more, you want to understand them at all costs. You obviously want to kill them too, or harvest them. But if he said, hey, I'm painting it orange, and for whatever reason they're running in and, committing suicide, right there in front of us, then, I'd throw an orange one out there. Whatever's working.
Yeah.
I just always find it fascinating to hear the different stories. I am actually going to paint up one of my DSD jakes and paint a white face, and I'm going to try some sets in Mexico and set the regular jake and set the white face. I'm going to try and set them, equidistant where, not like if a gobbler's coming from the left, set the white on the left. I'm going to try and set it where it gives them a choice, an equal choice, and see if birds are going to make a distinct difference. And they, 9 times out of 10, they went towards the white. Well, then we can start hypothesizing as to why that happened.
Exactly. And that's, if you want to test it, that's it.
Yeah, and I get the idea that, hey, it works, and Matt's like, I would never take anything but a white face, either a white face jake or a white face gobbler. I get it. He's trying to be successful every time he goes out, for sure. I totally get that. And so, it's just going to be fun to kind of test it out. I wonder if it has anything to do with also the visibility of white versus red, white, and blue versus, red. White is a color that you can see from a long ways out, and I wonder if it's that's a triggering mechanism as well.
Well, and it absolutely very well may be, and you and I spoke about this too, about the fact, especially early mornings, how many times have you been out, sitting under a roost, birds are still gobbling, they're going crazy on the roost, and all of a sudden something catches your eye at the corner of your eye, and it's that white head. It's that bright white head coming through the, wherever it's so dark you can barely see anything, but man, that white head just glows and you can see it coming through the darkness there. So absolutely, it definitely does stand out very, very well, and that actually may be a benefit in certain areas as well.
All right, so you are waiting on an archery hunter to show up, bluebird weather, birds out strutting. You've got another weather change coming.
Yeah. Talk
a little bit about your strategy, what you foresee happening, and kind of your game plan as of right now.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat that we were in the last time we spoke, where I'm basically just getting a pattern, getting an idea of where these birds are, what are they doing, where are they going. The problem that I have now, and this is going to be the challenge, I've got several areas, well, I've got a bunch of different areas, but the most consistent areas with the best birds right now are areas that are out in open fields or in certain areas where when it gets windy, especially if it's going to get windy from, say, like a west or northwest direction or whatever, they're not going to be there. They're going to be tucked down into these little protected sheltered pockets. Well, I've got a couple of those sheltered pockets, but the problem is the vast majority of birds are not there right now. Now, it's not to say they won't be when the wind starts blowing, but, right now the weather's absolutely gorgeous, but when he comes in Thursday night, the wind is supposed to start to blow, and then Friday and Saturday we're supposed to have 30-plus mile-an-hour winds and cold, like 30, 40 degrees, rain, snow, just horrible weather. So I think what it's going to be is today and tomorrow especially, I'm going to be just, okay, where are these birds? Where are they roosting? And where is going to be the nearest protected pocket that I can get in out of the wind? And I think our strategy is just going to be to dress warm, get in early, and just have patience and sit. Obviously I'm going to call. I'm still going to have the decoys out, but the birds may pitch out, fly out, go feed, or try to go feed where they normally are, but then they're going to circle back, and we know that they're going to be in those protected pockets. That's exactly what happened last Tuesday with the girls. It took them probably 4 hours to finally work their way to us. They were there. They just were taking their time. They just were staying in that protected shelter belt, but they just finally slowly worked their way to us. Once they were able to hear our call, and then it was over, they came marching right in. But it's just going to be a patience game and being in those pockets where they can get in, out of the wind, and preferably if we got any sort of sun, in the sun, out of the wind, where it's a little bit warmer for them, a little bit more protected, and just, again, be patient and just dress warm enough where we can sit it out and wait.
Well, I'll be watching for your success. I'm getting excited to head down for Gould's, and it's a great time of year, isn't it?
Oh, it is, man. People ask us all the time, what, if you had one to choose from, would it be elk or turkey? When it's elk season, I say it's elk. When it's turkey season, I'm like, I don't know.
I'm just glad they don't overlap. I'm glad that
can
they
you
have
imagine?
Separate season. No,
can you
rough.
imagine? Oh, no.
It'd be rough to have to choose.
I think it'd be rough on our spouses. At least it gives our spouses a couple months to recover from.
Well, that's true. So what's going on with Roe Hunting Resources right now? What can people expect coming over the summer and into elk season?
Well, I just posted on the elk module. So we just keep, if you're following on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff, I'm still putting stuff on social media. But from an elk standpoint, the elk module, I just uploaded a handful of videos, and I've got a couple of other ones getting ready to get put in and get uploaded. We're actually going to expand a couple of the sections, like so for instance, in the behavior section, I'm going to move some things around a little bit just to make it a little bit more organized for folks and get a better handle on stuff. But we're going to dive into a little bit more behavior stuff, and then I'm going to also dive in a little bit more this year on more of the scouting and planning stuff. People are asking me all the time, how the heck am I, how do I go about finding elk, and why am I always successful at finding animals? So that's going to be a big one this summer. So yeah, I've got a bunch of other videos already get posted onto the elk module. There's going to be a bunch more this summer as well. And then, like we talked about before, especially here in May, once we start rocking and rolling with some of our habitat stuff, I'm going to start putting together more videos on the actual habitat stuff that we're doing out here in Kansas. Food plots, habitat improvement projects, what are challenges, what are we doing to mitigate those challenges, and what are we doing to kind of help our populations as much as possible.
Good stuff, man. Want to give you a chance to let people know how they can find you, as always, and I'll be watching for your success.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, no, just Roe Hunting Resources, ROE Hunting Resources, and pretty much that's, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, most of the time it's Instagram or Facebook, Roe Hunting Resources, YouTube channel, Roe Hunting Resources, and then if you're interested in that elk module, the deeper instructional stuff, it's just rowhuntingresources.com, and jump on there. But anywhere you want to find us is just ROE huntingresources.com.
Awesome, buddy. All right, God bless. Take care.
All right, brother. I'll be looking at your stuff too. Good luck in Mexico.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye.